Sometimes, honey, the moment you realize you were wrong, the world spins so fast you gotta sit down. My little girl didn't sit down, she went full horizontal right there in the ballroom. Good evening, my beautiful people, and welcome. I want to tell you about a dress, a party, and a lesson in humility that cost me about $30 and almost sent my daughter to the emergency room. A few weeks ago I was getting ready for a fancy charity gala, a place where the diamonds sparkle brighter than the stars and the opinions shine even harsher. I was holding up a dress, one of my favorite vintage pieces, a beautiful velvet number with intricate beading and a history older than my mortgage. My sweet daughter, she's got a good heart but a very modern eye. She looked at that dress, that beautiful deep emerald masterpiece, and wrinkled her nose. She didn't whisper it, she declared it for all the ancestors to hear, a dress for poor people. Now that child had seen the label price, but she hadn't seen the value. But the real lesson arrived later at the party when I walked in and she fainted. The 21st century is defined by a singular technological inflection point, the deep synergistic convergence of bioengineering and artificial general intelligence. This is not merely about using one field to assist the other, it is about the fundamental integration of digital computation with biological substrate, creating a new class of synthetic intelligence and augmented life. This fusion redefines what it means to be alive, intelligent, and evolving. It marks the true beginning of the post-human era, a time of unprecedented acceleration and profound ethical challenge. Artificial general intelligence acts as the ultimate catalyst for biological discovery. Biology is the science of immense complexity involving billions of simultaneous interacting variables, which surpasses human intuitive capacity. AGI systems are uniquely suited to model this chaos. Consider the challenge of protein folding, the process by which a linear chain of amino acids spontaneously assumes a three-dimensional shape which dictates its function. This problem stumped scientists for decades, but AGI has cracked the code. Using deep learning and massive datasets, models can predict complex protein structures with near-perfect accuracy in moments. This predictive power accelerates drug discovery, allowing researchers to design novel therapeutic proteins and antibodies targeted precisely to disease mechanisms rather than relying on slow, expensive trial-and-error methods. The timeline for bringing life-saving drugs to market is shrinking from a decade to perhaps mere months, all thanks to the computational power of intelligent algorithms working on biological data. Furthermore, AGI is revolutionizing genomics and personalized medicine. Analyzing individual human genomes to find unique mutations or susceptibilities is a computational nightmare involving terabytes of data. AGI sifts through this massive genetic landscape, identifying subtle patterns correlating specific genes to disease progression or drug efficacy. This allows doctors to tailor treatments down to the individual patient, not just the average demographic. Imagine an AGI that continuously monitors your health data, your genetic markers, your lifestyle inputs, and predicts a potential illness months before symptoms even appear, providing preventative interventions. This is the promise of truly personalized health care, a proactive system driven by synthetic intelligence managing human biology for optimal longevity and performance. The elimination of many chronic diseases, especially complex diseases like cancer and neurodegenerative conditions, is now within technological sight, a direct result of AGI's capacity to understand biological complexity at scale. Conversely, bioengineering is providing the inspiration and perhaps the ultimate medium for advancing artificial general intelligence itself. The human brain remains the most efficient computation machine known to existence, consuming only 20 watts of power while performing operations no current supercomputer can rival. This has led to the development of neuromorphic computing hardware specifically designed to mimic the architecture and function of biological neurons and synapses. These chips move away from the traditional von Neumann architecture, allowing processing and memory to occur simultaneously and locally, drastically increasing speed and energy efficiency. These bio-inspired circuits are the next evolutionary step for hardware, moving us closer to achieving truly brain-like general intelligence. Beyond hardware lies the tantalizing prospect of biological computing, or wetware. Scientists are now exploring the possibility of using self-assembling biological components like DNA strands or even living neurons to perform computation. DNA computation, for instance, can solve certain complex mathematical problems in parallel far more efficiently than silicon-based systems. While still nascent, the integration of living biological material with electronic circuits offers a pathway to computation that is self-repairing, self-optimizing, and potentially orders of magnitude more dense than any silicon-based system. This biological influence on computing is driven by the realization that life itself is the most powerful information processing system available. The practical bridge between these two domains is the brain-computer interface (BCI). These devices are rapidly moving beyond simple medical applications like treating Parkinson's disease or restoring movement after paralysis. Advanced BCIs are becoming two-way communication systems capable of reading neural signals and writing information back into the brain. Initially focused on restoring lost function, for example allowing a paralyzed person to control a robotic limb with thought, BCI technology is quickly shifting toward cognitive augmentation. Imagine downloading a new skill or a vast library of knowledge directly into your cortex, bypassing years of study. This direct merger of human thought and digital information fundamentally changes the nature of learning, expertise, and communication, creating a vast human-digital network. This powerful convergence brings forth immense ethical and societal implications. The first major challenge is equity and access. If technologies for radical life extension and cognitive enhancement are only available to the ultra-wealthy, society faces an existential risk of creating a permanent biological class divide between the augmented and the unaugmented, a true biological apartheid. Fair regulation and subsidized access become crucial policy imperatives to ensure the benefits of this convergence are shared by all of humanity, not just a privileged few. Another profound concern revolves around control and autonomy. As AGI systems become more integrated into our bodies and brains, who holds the ultimate control over the resulting synthetic intelligence? The data generated by personalized genomics and BCIs is intensely private, and the thought of a third party, whether corporate or governmental, having access to or control over one's neural activity raises massive questions about personal sovereignty and human rights. We must establish robust legal and ethical frameworks now to govern the relationship between humans and their increasingly sophisticated biological and digital enhancements. The long-term implications point toward a longevity revolution and a redefinition of the human condition. Diseases previously considered incurable or eradicated. Aging itself may be treated as a manageable condition rather than an inevitable process. This demographic shift will put immense pressure on existing social structures, retirement systems, and resource allocation, requiring a complete rethinking of what a 100-year working life looks like. Education will shift from rote memorization to creative problem solving and collaboration with AGI partners. The ultimate destination of this convergence is perhaps the creation of a technological singularity where artificial intelligence and biological complexity merge to the point where they become indistinguishable and capable of self-improvement at an exponential rate. Whether this leads to a utopian future of abundance or a dystopian loss of human relevance depends entirely on the moral compass we embed into the foundational protocols of this new reality. We must ensure that the drive for technological perfection is always tempered by the value of human connection, compassion, and ethical wisdom. In conclusion, the convergence of bioengineering and artificial general intelligence is the defining project of our time. It is a journey into the unknown where the lines between machine and life, algorithm and DNA, mind and network dissolve. This fusion promises to solve humanity's most pressing problems, from disease to environmental collapse, but it demands a level of global responsibility and foresight never before required. We are designing the next stage of evolution, and we must proceed with humility, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to the shared future of humanity, the augmented and the unaugmented alike. The creation of a conscious ethical framework is not a secondary concern, it is the most critical engineering task of the millennium, because once the switch is flipped there will be no turning back from the boundless complexity we unleash. Oh my sweet children, let us talk about a truth so powerful, so transformative it can move mountains and change minds. We are talking about the second essential lesson from that fateful night, a lesson I call the power of presentation. Now when I speak of presentation, I am not just talking about the velvet or the sheen of the fabric or the crispness of the lapel. No darling, that is just the beginning, that is merely the canvas. True presentation is the holy trinity of context, confidence and intentional style working together to create an undeniable force field around you. It is the aura that announces your arrival before your foot even touches the floor. The dress itself was just a dress. It was a vintage piece, a thrift store treasure, to my daughter a hand-me-down relic fit for a pauper. But when I presented it, I wrapped it in a story and bathed it in light. The greatest magic trick in life, my loves, is the ability to take something ordinary, something dismissed, something misunderstood, and reframe it with such conviction that the world must halt its judgment and pay attention. You see, my daughter only saw the age of the fabric, she only saw the price, she saw a weakness, she saw a flaw. But I saw history, I saw uniqueness, I saw character, and I presented it not as a weakness but as the grandest, most assured strength in the entire room. Think about that word, strength. How does a dress become strength? It becomes strength when the woman wearing it has done the interior work. Presentation is first an inside job. It is not the external covering that is strong, it is the spirit underneath that garment that is unshakable. That is the confidence component. Confidence is not arrogance, it is simply the deep-settled belief that you belong wherever your feet are standing. When I walked into that gala, I didn't hope I belonged, I knew I belonged. The confidence in my posture, the stillness in my gaze, the slow deliberate pace of my step, all of that told a story louder than any diamond necklace could ever shout. If you feel hesitant, if you feel small, if you feel like an imposter, the most expensive designer garment will hang on you like a cheap costume. But if you have rooted yourself in your own worth, if you have found your center, your quiet assurance, that old velvet dress becomes coronation robes. The second part of the Trinity is context. My daughter called it poor people's clothing while it hung lifelessly in my closet surrounded by my everyday shoes and laundry. In that context it was just a piece of old fabric. But honey, the ballroom, the chandelier light, the polished wood, the sea of homogeneous modern fashion, all of that provided a dramatic contrast. The context transformed the dress. Suddenly its age wasn't a flaw, it was an antiquity. Its deep emerald color wasn't dull, it was grounding and sophisticated. Its heavy velvet wasn't poor, it was opulent and rare. Context is everything, darling. You need to learn how to choose your context wisely and how to manipulate it subtly. You must place your gifts, your truths, your unique self in a setting that allows them to shine, not diminish them. Do not let your environment define you, you must define your environment by your presence in it. A pearl is just a rock until it is viewed against black velvet. You are the pearl, find your velvet. And the final glorious element is intentional style. This is where the artistry lies. Intentional style is the difference between dressing yourself and composing a masterpiece. It is the perfect earring that echoes the beating of the dress. It is the subtle vintage hairstyle that pulls the whole look out of the past and sets it firmly in a timeless present. It is the choice to be different, the conscious rejection of the fleeting trend. You choose every piece, you choose the shade of lipstick, the height of the heel, the angle of the head. When you dress with intention, you are making a deliberate statement about who you are and what you stand for. You are telling the world, I thought about this, I chose this, I meant to do this. That commitment, that sheer intentionality is what transforms a perceived weakness, that old-fashioned style, into an undeniable strength that no one can ignore. It stops traffic, it silences critics, and it certainly causes a few dramatic fainting spells. This power of presentation is not limited to clothing. It applies to every single facet of your life. When you enter a meeting, your presentation is your preparation, your research, your clear articulation, your measured tone. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you present it weakly, if you lack conviction, if you allow fear to tremble in your voice, your idea will be dismissed, just like that dress in my closet. But if you walk in with intentional style, clear thinking, and confidence, even a simple unglamorous truth becomes an undeniable policy change. Consider how we present our flaws. We all have them, those little imperfections, those histories we try to hide, those mistakes we hope people forget. But what if you chose to present them differently? What if you chose to present your vulnerability not as a weakness but as the source of your resilience? What if you presented your scar not as an injury but as a map of your survival? When you intentionally incorporate your perceived weaknesses into your style, you disarm the world because you have already accepted and claimed those parts of yourself. A genuine presentation of a complex self is the most powerful thing you can wear. It says, I am not trying to be perfect, I am trying to be real, and real is infinitely more compelling than perfect ever could be. You need to understand the profound gravity of first impressions. They are built upon this power of presentation. A first impression is not a final judgment, but it is a vital opening statement. It is the trailer for the movie of your life. Make sure that trailer is compelling, make sure it is honest, make sure it is edited with wisdom. You are in control of the narrative, you are the director, you are the star. Do not let carelessness or fear write your script. Invest time in how you show up, because how you present yourself is how you teach the world to treat you. If you present yourself as deserving of respect and admiration, the world will inevitably follow your lead. If you present yourself as an afterthought, you will be treated as one. The power of presentation is ultimately about respect. It is respecting the space you are entering. It is respecting the people you are meeting. Most importantly, it is respecting the magnificent and complex individual you are. When I honored that old velvet dress with careful styling and total confidence, I was honoring its true value, and in turn I was honoring myself. I was making a statement that I recognize beauty wherever it hides, whether it is in a $30 garment or a priceless gem. That recognition, that discerning eye, that total self-assurance is the true source of power. My daughter had to faint because the presentation was so strong, so complete, so undeniable, it shocked her system into a much-needed realization. Learn from her fainting spell, darling. Don't wait for shock to force you to see. Choose to see your own power today. Choose to present your authentic self with confidence, context, and unwavering intentional style, and watch the world reshape itself around you. Think of a mighty sequoia tree, the tallest living thing on earth. What do we admire? We admire the height, the thick bark, the green canopy, the impossible reach toward the sun. We see the glory, the visibility, the finished product. But what is truly holding that colossal weight, a weight that can withstand centuries of storms, hurricanes, droughts, and fire? It is not the visible trunk that is merely the messenger. The real answer lies hundreds of feet beneath the soil, in the intricate web of its root system. Those roots are the internal architecture of the tree, unseen, unsung, yet absolutely indispensable. They are not flashy, they are covered in mud and darkness, but they are doing the only work that truly matters. They are gathering sustenance, they are providing ballast, they are communicating with the forest floor. Your internal architecture is your root system, and you must spend far more time nurturing the roots than decorating the leaves. What exactly is this internal architecture? It is your process consistency, your daily discipline, your unflinching commitment to small incremental tasks that no one else ever sees. It is the decision you make at 6 a.m. when your alarm goes off. It is the 300 words you write every day, not just the 500-page novel you aspire to publish. It is the 5 minutes of deep breathing when chaos reigns, not the 2-week yoga retreat you plan for next year. Greatness is not an event, it is a slow, deliberate aggregation of tiny, consistent efforts. The root system grows one microscopic cell at a time, one fiber deepening into the soil year after year. There is no instant root system, there is only relentless growth in the dark. This consistency is the mortar between the bricks of your character. It provides the structural integrity that allows you to handle pressure. Anyone can appear strong when things are easy, when the sun is shining and the market is booming. But the true test of architecture comes during the earthquake, during the financial crash, during the betrayal or the loss. If your foundation is hollow, if it is built on quicksand or borrowed materials, your entire structure, your carefully constructed life will shudder and fall. But if you have been faithful to the unseen work, if you have practiced patience and persistence in the shadows, your structure will merely sway and then settle back firmer than before. The strength of the building is in the connection of its parts, not in the material of a single wall. The chief material of this internal scaffold is unwavering integrity. Integrity is not about being honest when someone is watching, that is mere public relations. Integrity is what you do when no one is watching, when you have the perfect opportunity to cut a corner, to take an unfair advantage, to let a small lie stand unchallenged. Integrity is the rebar, the steel framework that runs through the concrete of your decisions. It ensures that your stated values match your daily actions. If you claim to value honesty but regularly exaggerate your achievements, you are introducing a fatal structural flaw. If you claim to value health but consistently sabotage your body with neglect, you are building with rotten timber. That misalignment, that gap between who you say you are and who you actually are, creates a terrible internal stress, a psychological torque that eventually breaks the spirit. You must close that gap, you must align your architecture so that your outward expression is a true reflection of your inward code. We live in a world that glorifies surface speed and immediate output. We are constantly pressured to produce, to broadcast, to be visible. But a strong structure requires the power of void, the moments of stillness, the space for reflection and repair. Think of a massive cathedral. The architects intentionally leave large empty spaces, the nave, the arches, the soaring ceilings. These voids are not wasted space, they are essential components of the design. They distribute the load and create the acoustics and the sense of awe. Your mind, your schedule, your life must have similar voids. You must deliberately carve out time for nothingness, for rest, for deep solitude. This is not laziness, this is essential maintenance. In the quiet the deep roots can draw the most water, the mind can process the information it has gathered, the structure can heal its microscopic cracks. If you are constantly running, if you are constantly filling every available moment, you are stressing the structure to the point of collapse. You must honor the necessity of the internal pause. This silent language also dictates the quality of your relationships. When your internal architecture is strong, you stop seeking external validation to prop up a weak self-image. You stop needing constant approval or applause. Instead, you approach others from a place of self-contained wholeness. You are not looking for someone to complete you, you are looking for someone to share life with. This radically changes the dynamic. Relationships built on two whole people are collaborative and empowering. Relationships built on two halves desperately seeking completion are anxious and needy and ultimately unsustainable. Your strength, your peace, your happiness must first originate from that deep quiet place within you. The ultimate goal of this internal work is unbreakable resilience. Resilience is not about avoiding the storm, it is about knowing with absolute certainty that you can endure the storm. When external circumstances change, as they always will, when the market dips, when the client leaves, when the diagnosis is bad, your core structure remains intact. You do not panic, you do not lash out, you simply brace yourself and wait for the wind to pass. This is the difference between a house built on sand, which is charming but ephemeral, and a lighthouse built on rock, which is stark but eternal. Be the lighthouse, darling, be the immovable point of certainty in a sea of turbulence. So my beloved friends, I urge you to shift your focus today. Stop worrying so much about the external shine, the headline, the immediate presentation. Those things are important, but they are secondary. Go home tonight and ask yourself, what is the condition of my root system? Where am I cutting corners in the dark? Where are my values misaligned with my actions? Where is the gap between who I pretend to be and who I truly am? Start digging, start building, start repairing. Choose the uncomfortable truth of slow, consistent internal work over the fleeting gratification of external praise. Build your life as if it must last for centuries, not just for a season. Be mindful of the small unnoticed decisions you make, because those quiet choices are the ones that determine whether you will stand tall and firm through every storm, or whether you will be another lovely structure that collapses under the first real weight. The greatest legacy you can leave is not the size of your fortune, but the impenetrable integrity of your soul. Build deep, build true, build with intention, build forever. That is the silent, indispensable power of internal architecture. A single diamond is beautiful, yes, but it is just a rock until it is cut and set within a design that amplifies its light and connects it to the wealth of the chain. You see too many people operate as lone wolves, as solitary geniuses, or as specialists locked in their silos. They are powerful nodes, but they have no edges, they have no lines of communication, they have no flow. Their potential is trapped, a massive reservoir with no pipes to carry the water to the waiting fields. The true architect of success does not just build strong individual components, they build the system of linkage, the intricate highway that allows energy and ideas to travel freely and instantaneously. This is the difference between a soloist and a conductor. The soloist is technically flawless, the conductor creates the total transcendent experience by linking the brass to the woodwinds, the rhythm to the melody. The first step in mastering interconnection is abandoning the scarcity mindset that tells you resources are finite and must be hoarded. This mindset breeds silos and secrets. The abundance mindset recognizes that resources are generated, not just consumed, and that the greatest generator of new resources is the point of connection. When you introduce two brilliant people who would never have met, when you blend two unrelated industries, when you apply a marketing solution to an engineering problem, that is the moment of creation. That connection, that collision of difference generates an entirely new form of energy that never existed before. This is where the exponential growth begins, where 1 + 1 equals not 2 but 100. Look at the history of innovation. It is almost never the invention itself that changes the world, it is the interconnection of the invention with existing infrastructure. The automobile was just a loud toy until someone built a network of paved roads and gasoline stations. The telephone was a novelty until it connected millions of homes. You must build your infrastructure of flow. Your personal grid must be expansive, durable, and capable of handling massive loads of information and influence. You must be the switchboard, the central hub, the nexus where maximum leverage can be achieved. To build this network you need to cultivate syntactic leadership. This is not the leadership of commanding but the leadership of connecting. A syntactic leader sees the empty spaces between the teams, the unlinked resources, the potential alliances that have not yet formed. They move like water, filling the voids, facilitating the mergers of concepts and capabilities. They speak the language of engineering to the finance department and the language of empathy to the technical team. They are translators, builders of bridges, and masters of soft diplomacy. They understand that a network is not a hierarchy, it is a flat web where strength is derived from redundancy and diversity, not from top-down control. This doctrine requires a radical embrace of cross-pollination. You must force yourself to leave your comfort zone and interact with domains that challenge your expertise. If you are a scientist, read poetry. If you are a financial analyst, study ancient history. These seemingly unrelated inputs are not distractions, they are the fertile ground where unforeseen solutions take root. The mind that is fed only one type of information becomes rigid and brittle like dry clay. The mind that is fed a diverse ecosystem of thought remains flexible, adaptable, and endlessly creative. The most profound breakthroughs happen at the intersection of disciplines, not within their narrow confines. The key operational component of interconnection is intentional reciprocity. A true network is never transactional, it is always reciprocal. You must give without expectation of immediate return, and you must be profoundly open to receiving. Generosity is the currency of the network. If you only approach connections with a hand outstretched demanding a favor, the network will recoil and isolate you. But if you constantly offer your knowledge, your time, your access, and your energy, you create a magnetic field of trust. People are drawn to those who create value for the entire system, not just for themselves. This deep trust forms the unbreakable fiber of your strategic alliances. We must also talk about the dark side of isolation, the brittle point of failure. A single point of failure is an architectural sin. If your entire structure rests on one person, one client, one skill set, or one source of income, you are always one unexpected event away from total collapse. Strategic interconnection is your insurance policy. It means having multiple revenue streams, multiple mentors, multiple skill applications, and multiple avenues for influence. When one link breaks, the entire system merely redistributes the load and continues functioning seamlessly. It is the wisdom of the body that has two kidneys, not one. You must engineer that same level of systemic resilience into your life and your business. Finally, we must consider legacy as interconnected output. Legacy is not a tombstone inscription, it is the living, breathing network that continues to generate value long after you have moved on. Your true legacy is the system of connections you established, the collaborations you initiated, the people you brought together who continue to work, innovate, and thrive without your direct oversight. Did you leave behind a series of finished projects, or did you leave behind a self-sustaining ecology that continues to grow? The true master of interconnection builds systems, not monuments. They build bridges that everyone uses, not statues that everyone looks at. So my darlings, embrace the work of linkage. Seek out difference, cherish the friction of opposing ideas, and always look for the empty space that needs filling with a bridge. Move from being a powerful independent unit to becoming the indispensable organizer of collective power. The future belongs not to the smartest person in the room but to the one who can connect all the other smart people and focus their energy into a singular, unstoppable beam. Master the doctrine of strategic interconnection and you will not just change your world, you will change the world for everyone connected to you. We have spoken of the future vision, the present presentation, the hidden architecture, and the external network. Now we must address the engine of perpetual motion, the mechanism by which you sustain growth, avoid stagnation, and continuously ascend to higher planes of performance and consciousness. This engine is built on two simple yet brutally difficult principles: relentless self-critique and fearless reincarnation. Relentless self-critique is not self-flagellation or wallowing in doubt. It is an act of supreme confidence. It means standing outside your own finished work, your successful product, your celebrated performance, and asking one chilling question: where is the next flaw, the invisible weakness, the latent obsolescence? This is the only way to avoid the comfort of the plateau, which is merely a gentle slope towards irrelevance. The successful person celebrates a victory for a moment and then immediately enters the laboratory to dismantle their own creation, searching for the parts that can be improved or replaced. This means you must institutionalize failure analysis not just for when things go wrong but for when things go spectacularly right. Victory often hides deeper flaws because the success provides a dopamine cushion that dulls your critical edge. You must resist the sedative of achievement. The second principle, fearless reincarnation, requires you to embrace the fact that the person who achieved the last great success is fundamentally inadequate to achieve the next. You must be willing to kill your darlings, your most beloved ideas, your signature methods, even your established identity. This is terrifying because our sense of self is often tied up in our past accomplishments. The brilliant designer who created the revolutionary object must be willing to burn that object down to create the next one. The world remembers the iPhone, not the iPod, even though the iPod was a foundational revolutionary success. Steve Jobs had to kill his own darling to transcend it. This process of rebirth is the heart of transcendence. You are not meant to repeat your past, you are meant to leverage it and leave it behind. Think of the caterpillar, the pupa, and the butterfly. The butterfly is not an improved caterpillar, it is an entirely new being that operates on a fundamentally different plane of existence. The caterpillar must wholly dissolve in the pupa stage to become the butterfly. You must allow yourself to dissolve your previous success to allow the next higher version of yourself to emerge. This requires immense psychological courage because dissolution is painful and uncertain. The operational tool for iterative transcendence is the minor tweak protocol. You do not need massive radical overhauls every day. You need tiny, persistent refinements. A complex system is easier to control through small adjustments than through massive interventions. Focus on improving one variable by 1% every single day. 1% better presentation, 1% more efficient process, 1% deeper reading. The compound effect of these minor tweaks is mathematically staggering. Over the course of a year, a 1% daily improvement results in a 37-fold improvement. This is the secret mathematics of success. It is not about genius or luck, it is about the sustained power of the minor tweak applied across time. This forces us to value data-driven humility. You must create clear metrics and feedback loops that relentlessly inform you of the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. Your feelings, your ego, and your personal narrative are unreliable guides. The data, however, is ruthlessly objective. You must build systems that automatically flag your performance gaps, your operational inefficiencies, and your failures in communication. And then you must listen to the data without defensiveness. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less often and focusing instead on the external objective reality of the metrics. Iterative transcendence also defines your relationship with your time and energy. Time is the non-renewable resource and energy is the fuel. Most people spend their time inefficiently attempting massive gains that rarely materialize. The iterative master spends their time strategically focusing on high-leverage activities that produce tiny consistent improvements. They understand that energy is the ultimate constraint. They are ruthless in eliminating tasks that drain their fuel without contributing to the spiral of ascent. If an activity is merely repetitive or defensive and does not feed the loop of learning and refinement, it must be delegated, automated, or eliminated entirely. Your highest energy should be reserved for the moments of critique and creation. The philosophical anchor of Keynote 5 is the belief that the future self is the ultimate client. Every decision you make, every iteration you complete, every refinement you execute is a gift or a debt to the person you are going to be in 6 months, in 2 years, in a decade. Stop living for the instantaneous gratification of the current self. Start building the scaffold, the architecture, the network that your future self will need to achieve their yet unknown potential. Your future self will thank you for the disciplines you imposed today, for the failures you dissected yesterday, and for the continuous refinement you never allowed to cease. Embrace the spiral. Know that you are never finished, you are simply getting better. Be ruthless in your critique, be courageous in your reincarnation, be persistent in your minor tweaks. Do not fear the dissolution of the old self because it is the only path to the birth of the next grander version. This is the continuous climb, the joyful labor, the perpetual ascent. This is iterative transcendence. Impact is not a simple metric. It is not the total dollars earned or the number of awards won. It is the multiplicative field you generate. A transaction is a single exchange, a single act of commerce. Impact is a geometric progression where your single act triggers a cascade of subsequent actions in others. Your invention does not just solve a problem for one client, it creates 3 new industries and employs 10,000 people. Your piece of art does not just move one viewer, it shifts the entire cultural dialogue for a generation. This is the difference between addition and multiplication, between competence and consequence. You must always think in terms of the multiplier effect, the exponential yield of your intention. To achieve this multiplicative level, you must master the concept of resonance and frequency. Every action has a unique vibration, a specific frequency. Most people broadcast on a narrow, selfish frequency, preoccupied with their immediate needs and desires. The resulting impact is weak, quickly absorbed and transient. The master, however, tunes their output to the deep, powerful frequency of shared human purpose. When your work resonates with the fundamental needs of society, for security, for knowledge, for beauty, for connection, your signal is amplified naturally. It travels further, it lasts longer, and it cannot be easily ignored. You must constantly calibrate your project, not just for excellence but for maximum social and ethical resonance. Does your work alleviate suffering? Does it increase understanding? Does it unlock potential? If the answer is yes, your frequency is powerful. Now let us discuss the vital need for ethical calibration. Impact without ethical grounding is merely force. Force can build or force can destroy. The doctrine of integrated impact demands that you define your moral constraint, your immutable line in the sand. Your vision must be filtered through the highest ethical standards, not because it is polite but because it is the only way to build a truly durable and lasting structure. A building erected on morally shaky ground will eventually collapse under the weight of its own contradiction. Your architecture must be clean, your connections transparent, and your transcendence rooted in the betterment of the collective. Define your purpose beyond profit, beyond ego, beyond immediate gratification. Your deepest impact will flow from your deepest conviction. The mechanism for achieving such vast change with limited personal energy is deep leverage. This is the practical application of Keynote 4 interconnection. Leverage is the ability to apply minimum force for maximum systemic change. It is the fulcrum, the tiny point of pressure that moves the enormous weight of the world. You do not need to push every single brick, you need to push the keystone, the critical structural element whose movement forces the rearrangement of everything else. This means identifying the bottlenecks, the choke points, the high leverage decision in any system. Often this high leverage point is subtle, it is a key piece of legislation, a vital hire, a foundational algorithm, or a single elegant truth. Stop pushing hard everywhere, start pushing perfectly in one place. To identify this keystone, this point of maximum leverage, you must practice systemic deconstruction. You must be able to break down any complex reality into its fundamental components and map the flow of energy and influence between them. See the invisible relationships, the hidden dependencies, the critical nodes. Where does the maximum flow of information cross the maximum point of decision? That intersection, that tiny vulnerable point, is your leverage point. Master the art of the subtle shift, the gentle correction, the quiet whisper at the apex of power. This is the difference between a technician and a strategist. The technician fixes the faulty wire, the strategist redesigns the entire grid. Integrated impact also requires the mastery of attractor states. You do not impose your will, you create a powerful magnetic field, a desirable future state that naturally pulls the world towards it. Your work, your vision, your network must become so compelling, so undeniably superior that opposing forces dissipate and disparate elements converge voluntarily. You build a cathedral so beautiful that people bring their own stones to help complete it. You do this by making your impact self-evident, by ensuring your work is transparent and accessible, and by always prioritizing the quality of the system over the size of your control. Be the magnet, not the whip. The ultimate test of integrated impact is generational transfer. Did you design a system that dies when you retire, or did you design a system that sustains and evolves itself beyond your direct participation? This demands that you embed the principles of iterative transcendence into the very fabric of your organization. You must build failure analysis into the culture, not just the process. You must institutionalize the killing of darlings, making it a celebratory act of renewal rather than a painful loss. You must prioritize the mentorship and elevation of the next generation, ensuring that the fire is not merely passed on but is constantly being made hotter and brighter. Your greatest achievement will be the self-correcting, self-improving legacy you leave behind. So my doves, this is the final charge. Integrate your vision, your presentation, your architecture, your network and your transcendence into a singular force of beneficial change. Seek the multiplicative field, tune your frequency to universal purpose, define your ethical constraint, find the deepest leverage point and build for 1,000 years. This is not just a career plan, it is a blueprint for existence. Go forth and do not just leave your mark but leave a self-sustaining ecosystem of impact. You have the tools, you have the map, you have the genius. Now go build a world worthy of your potential.